Hooked up to the internet for the internet feed, and hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Randall Mock. I'm emceeing, and I'm, I guess, proud to be in this position of MC. I've got the pleasure of introducing four beautiful, active, patriotic ladies here, and I'm just so glad that they asked me. I don't know why, but nevertheless, I don't want to take a lot of time here. We have Lisa Compoletta of San Marcos, who is fighting the chip down in San Marcos there, and she's been fighting this for some time down there in San Marcos and doing a great job, and then I guess she called in reinforcements. So I think we've got some good ones, and furthermore, it's not only up to them, it's up to each one of you to help out. So you know the schedule for tomorrow, but I don't want to take too much time here, so let me hand this over to Lisa Marie, and we'll have her have about 8 minutes here. And
hi, y'all. I'm Lisa Marie. I'm from San Marcos, Texas. With your neighbors here in Central Texas Hill Country, we all come together when it comes to issues of liberty. We're here tonight simply to say that we just want one simple change to our animal control ordinance in San Marcos, and that is just one simple change. Simply, we don't want that notion of mandatory in the ordinance. We don't want to be criminals in our own home in San Marcos. We want to be able to know what the rules of the law are and be able to follow them and not have to break them, and that's why we're standing up on this issue. Our community is mobilized. We're all coming. We have a vigil tomorrow and several different events. From 12:30 to 1:30 at Grins in San Marcos, we'll have a meet and greet with Dr. Albrecht. We'll also have from 4 o'clock to 5:30 at Wake the Dead in San Marcos. We're going to have a pre-protest where we'll get together and make T-shirts and posters and talk about the issues and a meet and greet with Dr. Albrecht. And then, of course, at 6:30 is when the citizens of our community will sign in to make their argumentation known and what our concerns are with this ordinance. So we would encourage not only San Marcos residents to come out and sign at 6:30 and then to speak on that issue, and then our council meeting begins at 7. The issues are very simple. This is a mandatory. It was never discussed by the city council, and that's why there's public outcry, and we just simply want that one item changed. I think this is also an issue of health for our pets, as well as some religious and privacy concerns. And once again, we appreciate everybody giving us the opportunity to make the issues of San Marcos known. The fact that this is a packed house shows how concerned people are throughout Central Texas, and I see the head shake in the audience on this mandatory microchip issue. I appreciate your time. We look forward to you coming to our community. We love our pets in San Marcos, but we also love our freedom. Thank you very much all for your support.
thank you. You responded just like I wanted to, and yell and everything else. So I think it's okay with George on the network. But anyhow, this is wonderful. I tell you, we are now we have Judith McGarry, Farm and Ranch Freedom Alliance, and she's been very active for at least a couple of years here. 3 years, okay, and so, but you know, the best example I heard is the other day when Alex Jones came up and said, we're going to put a $16 chip in a $4 chicken. So that's something to take to other people, those that don't know that. But again, I won't take a lot of time. I want to pass this over to Judith so that we can hear what her thinking is. Thank you.
Fantastic to see this kind of a turnout at Brave New Books. This is a wonderful, wonderful event. For those of you who aren't familiar with the National Animal Identification System, or NAIS, Okay, the hisses tell me at least some of you all are. But for those that aren't, basically it boils down to a plan where anyone who owns even one livestock or poultry animal, so a chicken, a horse, a pet pot-bellied pig, or any of the farm animals, would have to register their property with the government, tag each animal, in most cases electronically, and report their movements to a database within 24 hours. A lot of people say, is this going to lead to human microchipping or human tracking? And actually my response is, this is human tracking. Because anyone who owns an animal now gets to report their movements to the government every time they pretty much go anywhere with their animals. Because last time I noticed, my horses don't load themselves up in the trailer and take off on their own. So back in 2005, the Texas legislature actually passed a law authorizing this program here in Texas. This was done before pretty much any average animal owner knew the first thing or had heard about NAIS. But the big industry guys, the big ag, came in with the state bureaucracy and they said, we want this program, we have to have this program. And they got authority for the Texas Animal Health Commission to make the entire NAIS program mandatory here in Texas. Now, ever since, we've been fighting this, and we have mostly held the agency to a slow crawl on it. We've sort of been staring at each other over the fence line. But the problem is they still have legal authority. And, next week they could wake up and put out their eggs, and there wouldn't be a whole lot we could do about it when it came down to stopping the regulations. What we need is to get that authority yanked away from them. We tried it last session. We came really, really close last session. We got the bill through the House, and we died on the last day of the Senate. So we're back, we have another bill, and we have flyers. If I'd known Catherine's were going to be yellow, I would have picked a different color. Look for the slightly lighter yellow flyers with a picture of a microchip on them. We'll put them out on the table. Catherine doesn't mind. This has the information on the bill number. It's Senate Bill 682. And it's been sitting pretty quiet so far in the Texas legislature. I'm disappointed. I am not seeing our senators jumping on and co-sponsoring it. So what we need are a lot of phone calls. We need folks, and we've got all of the information on the back of the flyer. You guys are willing to do a lot of work, and I appreciate that, but I've made it as easy as possible. You have the phone numbers right here. Call your senator. Tell him you want him to co-sponsor Senate Bill 682. And one thing, especially for the folks here, this is not, and y'all already know it's not just about farm animals. I'm preaching to the choir here. But it's about our food supply. That's something that's really fundamental that your neighbors might understand, that your communities hopefully will understand. It's about who has access, who has the right, who has the ability to raise food, and what are our options. And so do me a favor, even if you already know about NACE, grab some flyers anyways and hand them out in your communities also. So let's see if we can't get this bill through this session. Thank you.
What it's really about is, all of you know, it's about control. And, of course, there may be some new people. I certainly hope that there's new people, especially out there on the Internet listening in. So we really want to extend our open hand, not a clenched fist, to the people and say, look, this is about you, your pets, and everybody's got something in this fight. So, that's what makes this such a good coalition of bringing everything together. Because it's about food control, and then next is going to be people control. So it's a very thing that we need to watch out for. Now we have Sheila Dean, who I didn't have time up front to tell you about. We have Truth Seekers meeting on the south end of town, and I think the Internet people have got that. And then also, I want to take this opportunity to say some thank yous, and especially to Brave New Books that is giving us the facility and a lot of help here. So, and we've got a list of other people we need to say thank you to. We'll get to that next. But without more to do, I want to get Sheila Dean, who is a grassroots advocate for our 511 campaign. she's been a speaker there at our group, and we really appreciate that. I think out on the net there's a YouTube of her, or Google, I'm not sure, but I think there's a video of her at our meeting. So you might even try that. And but Sheila, we appreciate all you do, and thank you for being a truth seeker.
I am really proud to be with the level of activism that I've witnessed here with this shipping. You know, look at these ladies. Aren't they gorgeous? Please give them a big hand. And I doubt I can outdo myself with all of this. Thank you for coming to Brave New Books tonight. I am the, 511 campaigner for the opposition against Real ID. And I'm here to speak just briefly about what kind of dangers we all face with the Real ID. So we're all here tonight because we're exploring problems with the prolific use of RFID technologies here in Texas as identity solutions. And it's just not working out. In my work here in Texas, we've discovered that DHS has already tried and failed the RFID technology at the border in an experimental run with the U.S. visit program at the borders. The use of biometric data storage and microchip or magnetic strip technologies is just as big brother today as it was when they released the regulations in January of 2008. It is not safe to say that RFID for government identity is an appropriate use of taxpayers in Texas. It's a waste of our money, and anything else is an understatement. Texas has kicked the can down the road till 2010 on enhanced driver's licenses. Most recently, the Vice Chair of Appropriations, Raymond Pano, we can thank, has spurned the Department of Public Safety's request for funding on Real ID programs. So you may thank him for that.
Thank you.
That buys us a year on driver's licenses. However, the incremental application of RFID is going into the transportation worker identity credential, where they are now biometrifying the faces of mule skinners in tourist trades. They are going into our homes through our pets. They are going into our passport, where a 15-year record of your internal travel is kept no matter what you have done. In June of 2009, the Western Hemisphere Travel Initiative's demand for biometrics for travel will increase, starting with backscatter machines at airports. It's not law, but it is policy. With this much silent struggle for private sovereignty versus the belligerence of a corporatized entitlement, and these tech companies do have a lot of entitlement issues on your money. You have a choice, win or lose. If you win, your identity does not become a parcel for trade by LexisNexis or a hidden third party who profiteers from tracking your actions and selling it as information. When you lose big. Identity theft is neither convenient or safe, and more people are suffering from it as they report losses every day to their license division at DPS. So we have enemies in this struggle: black market identity theft rings, corporate complicity, seeking no-bid contracts with the government, regardless of the risk to consumers, and the apathy of those who are seeking the highest bid. These are the same people who call your right to privacy immigration, skewing the issue so that Texans are misled by an immigration carrot they will never have in their grasp to their satisfaction with Real ID regulations. So if you go for the immigration bait, you get a license that exposes you utterly. Those who persist with Real ID regulations will be guilty of reckless endangerment of masses of people. So here is your chance to steer Texas the right way. Here is your chance to steer Texas the right way. We draw the line. We don't run our country like it's an Eastern Bloc of Europe, circa 1940. It is time to remind our leaders of America of real identity. The plan to catalog you, sift, create a product identity for you is not your idea. It's not an American idea. It's a globalist idea. Please don't concede to a place in your consciousness where you believe the policy generators who put Real ID in place aren't looking for a way to save it. They are. Napolitano rebranding of Real ID as enhanced driver's licenses is an attempt to save it. You must resolve that this is not your life before there is an end to RFID, before there's an RFID reader on every street corner, every shopping center in your neighborhood. The work of the 511 campaign is to help introduce legislation, a concurrent resolution disowning the Federal Real ID Act on the basis of privacy, identity security, and personal sovereignty. We've had some success calling up the 10th Amendment with HCR 50, and it's now in committee as of recently. However, we won't rest until we know for sure that Texas has opted out of this voluntary, unfunded mandate. It is voluntary. No matter what they say, it's voluntary. You do not have to comply with the Real ID Act.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's an unfunded mandate from DHS, and it's going to build their federal infrastructure. So you've got to say no to any finance to bring any of these regulations to fruition. It's your job. It's your job. So we want you to join us in action to stop enhanced driver's licenses in Texas by calling or visiting your legislators. We encourage you to do what is necessary. Put in a call during your lunch break while the kids are napping on Wednesday, March 4th. Pick up the phone on March 4th and make the call to your legislator. On March 5th, some people are going to take off some time from work and go to Austin Capitol right up here, very close to Brave New Books, and we're going to go together and we're going to say, I'm sorry, this isn't for us. Not for Texas, no thank you. And then take some time to visit your district. If you can't do that, if you can't go with us to the Capitol, it's still okay. Maybe you can, go out on the 6th and visit your district office if you don't live in Austin, because it's okay. You can use the phone and you can go to your district office. It's closer. Nothing in government of any worth happens without you. So no one will stand up for your identity like you, but the 511 campaign is here to stand with you when you do. So, against RFID, the Western Hemisphere Travel Initiative, and the Real ID Act of 2005, we're here for you. So thank you for your time this evening. I look forward to taking questions later along with the rest of these fine women. And I would love to co-introduce Katherine Albrecht, everyone. Katherine Albrecht!
What you hear on the radio, you hear her love for you come through that radio, and it's just great to have these ladies here that are doing so much and that are so convicted to the cause, and especially Sheila. I just that's a tough act to follow, but I think Katherine can do that. But Katherine, we thank you for coming here. She is the author of Spy Chips and has been working the chip game first basically from privacy, but now it's escalated up to a full big forest fire, right? Thank you.
Whether to laugh or cry to see over probably 250 or 300 people packed here in Brave New Books. I'm thrilled to see Right, now let me scare you for a minute. When you walked in, there was nobody at the door checking your ID. Right? Look around. How many people in this room do you actually know? I'm looking around, I know maybe 5 or 6 of you. I probably know a lot of you by voice as callers to my radio program. I probably know a lot of you by email. People send me all sorts of interesting stories, and I feel like I have a lot of friends here in Austin. But when I look around this room, you are known to me by your love of liberty, but you're not known to be by name. And I like it that way. There are a lot of people out there who would very much like to know every single person in this room and would very much like to create a dossier on every single one of you and know where you leave and where you go to when you leave here this afternoon and how you get there and in which car you travel and what the license plate number on the back of that car is and who your fellow passengers are in that car. There are people who'd like to know where you go to dinner tonight when you leave here. There are people who'd like to know what books you buy, or maybe what books you pick up off the shelf and peruse while you're here in Brave New Books. Let me ask you something. I want you to, let me have you go with me on a little futuristic journey here, and let's travel about 5 years into the future. That's usually about how far ahead my brain works. So 5 years into the future, when you walked through the door of Brave New Books and you came down those steps to come into here, I want you to imagine that there was a little trash can. I mean, you didn't even notice it as you walked through the doorway. Maybe it was outside on the sidewalk. And as you walked by that trash can, a reader device inside of that trash can did sort of an invisible frisk of you as you walked past. And what it was frisking for was an RFID tag, presumably in your driver's license. Now, if you were too smart for that one, and maybe you had a lead-lined wallet, then it would start frisking for other things. How about an RFID-tagged credit card? There's over 100 million of those issued in the United States right now, ATM cards and credit cards with RFID in them. If it didn't find that, it would be frisking for an RFID tag, maybe in your Calvin Klein shirt, or maybe in the sole of your tennis shoes, or maybe in your Levi's brand jeans. These are all companies that have been experimenting with the idea of hiding RFID tags in your belongings. And when they did that, at that point then, a record would be made. Well, we know how many people walked into Brave New Books, and we know all the things associated with them. And I'm guessing, I did an experiment a couple years ago when I was leaving to give a speech, and I did sort of an inventory of all the things that I was wearing and carrying that at this future point would have an RFID tag in them. It was about 45 things. I mean, I had my purse with me, I had a comb, I had a lipstick, I had pantyhose on, I had all sorts of things with me and on me. And of those 45 things, most of them were things that I had bought that you could directly associate with me, like my shoes. People usually don't buy you shoes because they've got to fit. Usually you buy your own shoes. My own underwear, certain things that I had bought. But there were some other things on me that would have told even more about me. I had a watch that my mother had given to me for my graduation. That was on my wrist. So now, if you scanned it, you'd know that that was bought by her at a particular store at a particular date. So now you know somebody associated with me. I had my husband's winter scarf around my neck, something that he had bought. And scarves are pretty genderless. So I had a scarf around my neck. Now you know who he was. And what was more interesting still was I had a cheap, probably a 49-cent Bic pen tucked into my purse. Well, that 49-cent Bic pen was not mine. I had accidentally stolen it the day before from a reporter who I had had lunch with. So now you know who I've been talking to. So not only do you know who I am, but you know who my extended circle of acquaintances are. And so if you wanted to look at an event like this, which at some point in the future, an event like this may not even be legal any longer. There's certainly precedent for making events where people get together to talk about the corruption on the part of their government and their corporate overlords, and that's become a crime. It's one of the reasons why we're guaranteed in the First Amendment of the Constitution the right to assemble and the right to free speech, because that's one of the first things they want to go after. Because when you assemble, there's power in numbers, and when you speak, there's power in the truth. And when you combine those two things, usually things tend to happen. So at that future point, not only would you know who was in this room fighting for liberty or caring about liberty, but you'd know who to go after to start asking questions about you. Or maybe who to go after to start seeing if maybe some of those colleagues or those people whose scarves or pens you're carrying might be willing to become informants or might be willing to watch you in other ways. Or maybe they could be leaned on. So there is definitely a historical precedent for that. The good news today, I am guessing that in this entire room, the only RFID tags on anybody are either on your building access passes. Those of you who work for a corporation have an ID tag, press it up against the wall, right? That's an RFID tag. And probably on your credit cards and your ATM cards. Now, the good news, there is no RFID tag probably at this point in your shoes or sewn into your clothing. And there is no RFID tag, and here's where we need applause. There is no RFID tag in your driver's license. Yeah. Now, I've been working in the trenches on these issues since 1999 when I first founded Caspian. And for those of you who know anything about my history, I got started doing this fighting supermarket frequent shopper cards because something didn't seem right to me about showing a numbered ID card in order to get decent prices on something as basic for life as food. And when I discovered that every time you scan that little, Tom Thumb grocery card of the Albertsons preferred customer card or the Safeway card, that they were making a record of all of your food purchases. Those records in the future are going to come back and bite us in a big way. In fact, there's already plans afoot, and those are things that we can talk about. But that agenda of capturing a database of information about you and about the food that you consume is now expanding to wanting to control the food supply utterly and completely. So I'm kind of coming full circle in a way. It's like I sort of moved away from food surveillance into this whole world of RFID, and now, thanks to the efforts of folks like Judith and others to educate us about the National Animal Identification System, I can tell you that I believe that they are trying to control the food supply utterly. There's a very dangerous and frightening precedent for that in the Soviet Union, where literally tens of millions of people were starved to death through control of their food supply. And it's one of the ways that you can get an unruly and restless population to quickly comply is you cut them off from being able to obtain food. Now, if they do, how many of you have thought, and I certainly have, that if things get bad enough, I'll just go live in the country. I'll just get off the grid. I'll just go and live in the woods. I'll live under a rock before I will take part in any of this stuff. If it gets that bad, that's what I'll do. Well, I'll tell you this. Let's say you want to go to the country. Well, you got to eat something. And for most of us, eating something means you have a couple of chickens, maybe some eggs, maybe you have a cow, maybe you have some milk, maybe you plant some seeds in the ground. All of those options are being cut off from you. Pay attention to that, because the woods are not going to be an option. The farms are not going to be an option. You know what I just found out? I was doing some research for my appearance last week on Coast to Coast, where I talked about the grid, the frightening power grid that's coming our way. And in the course of doing that research, you know what I discovered? They've even found a way to track all the trees. Yeah, let me tell you this, because it's an interesting story. So there's this senior at MIT, you know, the brain trust for all the engineers. Well, when he was a freshman, he got this question in his head, and it was about something we've long known, that trees give off a slight electric charge. And so he wanted to figure out why that was. So he spent 4 years of his undergraduate education at MIT in engineering trying to figure this puzzle out. So first they thought, well, maybe it's kind of like that, where you put the lemon, you know, in high school you put the lemon and you make a lemon battery or a potato battery. So they tested that wasn't it. And then they tried a whole bunch of other things. And finally, he discovered that the reason trees give off electricity is because their roots have a different pH from the soil, and that slight pH imbalance creates an electrical charge. All right, so for most of us, we go, well, you know, that's very interesting, nice, you know, okay, move on. So he gets this idea, and he says, wow, so trees give off electricity? What can we do with that? Do you know what he came up with? He came up with a device that you can literally hammer into the ground. It's cheap. It makes contact with the roots. It picks up electricity, and what does he want to do with it? Put an RFID tag on every tree. Yeah, so that, and then link them all up, creating a total surveillance grid in the woods. So you think you're going to run away from this by going onto a farm? Forget it. You think you're going to run away from this by going out to the woods? No, because even if you disable 3 or 4 of these things, even if you can find them hammered into the base of a tree in the dirt, this thing is self-repairing. It just goes around the missing nodes in the network. They have a vision, I'm not kidding you, where every physical object, every tree, every bird, every cat, every dog, every person is tagged and tracked 24/7. And they're going to pull it off if we don't stop them. The technologies are there. The only thing standing between us right now and absolute total surveillance, which ultimately will mean absolute total tyranny, is you and me. That's it. There's nothing else stopping these guys. The courts aren't stopping them. The corporations are profiting from it. Do you know what the biggest market last year for RFID was on the globe? You'll love this. It was China. You know why? Because China issued a mandatory national ID card with full tracking capability, RFID tag, to every single person in China. That's over 1 billion people. And the reason why now they're moving on, and see, I saw this coming. Last year, when that contract was completed, big companies, American companies that ought to know better than putting this kind of technology into the hands of a communist government to track their people. Companies like Hewlett-Packard, companies like Dell, like Cisco, like IBM, big companies, right? Our companies, presumably. These companies were wringing their hands and crying over the fact that now their big cash cow had gone away. Now that we've fulfilled the contract, now that we've made the billions, literally billions, you know how much it costs to give to create 1 billion RFID tag driver's licenses or 1 RFID tag national ID cards? A fortune. So these guys made a ton of money off of that. And then they turned around, and I know this because I get all the industry publications. They turned around and said, well, now we're just back to tagging products, and where's the money in that? So you know what they're doing now? They're going after Janet Napolitano. They're going after Obama. They're going after your state legislature. They're going after everybody they can find to say, hey, guess what? 300 million Americans, you need to chip them. You need to put an RFID tag in their driver's licenses. It'll be really good for the economy. We'll keep making money. So that's why they're coming for you. It's money. Plain and simple. And that's why the corporations are coming for you. The government's coming for you because they're doing what governments have always done. Governments are coming for you because they want power over you. They want to see you grovel at their feet. That's the kind of people they are. That's why they do what they do. My definition for government, and those of you who listen to my radio show, you know this. It's people who have sought power over other people and obtained it. Plain and simple. That's who we're up against. There's nothing different between them and us. The only thing that makes us different from these people who wear their suits, their $3,000 suits, and stand a little taller than everybody else, is the fact that they've sought power, and we voted them in. Shame on us. All right. There are so many aspects of this coming together right now, and I'd like to, first of all, put out a huge word of thank you to my 3 wonderful and beautiful female colleagues here for their extraordinary efforts on this. I'd like to give them a hand right now. Their efforts are so crucial for this very important moment in history. I've been working on this stuff for about 10 years, as you know, and I have to say that I have not been fully scared until now. And I have had some moments when I've just kind of looked at my husband and said, honey, I'm scared. He said, you're scared? Oh yeah, I am, actually. And the reason for that is because I see where all of these, it's like the trajectory. Things are all aiming, and they're all aiming at one central location. Whether it's animal IDs in your pets, whether it's animal IDs in your farm animals, whether it's an RFID tag in your driver's license, regardless of what the issue is, real ID, they're all aiming at one central target. And you can see, it's like they're all, do you guys remember Close Encounters? I'm revealing my age, back in the 1970s. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I think I got that right, was, everybody had to go to that, hill for whatever reason. They were all, compelled, they just had to get to this hill and making, fantasizing about this hill and making clay models of the hill. And those of you who haven't seen it, check it out, it's a good movie. But they all had to go to this one central place. That's where we are right now. The corporations are all doing it. The agribusiness is all doing it. The regulatory bodies, the FDA, the USDA, you name it, they're all doing it. The government is doing it. It's like everybody is converging in one central location. And what is that central place where all this stuff is going to finally wind up? It's going to wind up in your right hand or your forehead. Because that's exactly what is happening right now. The National Animal Identification System. Let's get all the animals tagged first. Let's tag every cow, every pig, every chicken, every duck, so that you can't eat, you can't get off the grid. You're going to be under our thumb in that sense. And after we're done doing that, let's tag all of the dogs and the cats, so that literally every living, breathing, red-blooded, and even fish, even cold-blooded, living being on this planet has a microchip in it. Do you know already they've tagged literally millions of salmon? In fact, they've tagged so many salmon up in the Northwest, they have a big tunnel that these tagged salmon go through. It's an enormous RFID reader. It's bigger than this room. And as the water rushes through, they sort of blast these poor fish with an electromagnetic beam, and then they read their chips. Right? There are so many microchips in the fish up in the Northwest, the Pacific Northwest, that you can fly over the little islands up there, and you can actually see them glistening in the sun. And you know why they glisten? Because the Caspian terns, those are fish that eat the salmon, have eaten so many of these salmon with the microchips that when they poop them out again, everything biodegrades except the microchips. And you can literally fly over and the islands are shining with hundreds and thousands of microchips that have been excreted from these birds eating these salmon. Right? So we're looking to a point where every animal is going to be chipped, and then they're going to come for the trees. They've got the technology to do it. And then when they've come for everything else, then they're going to come for all the products. I've been talking about this for years. Those of you who are lucky enough to get our limited number of copies of Spy Chips tonight, because I don't think we ordered enough, will be able to read about how they plan to tag every sewing needle, every pencil, every Boeing jet, the list goes on and on. But literally every physical object manufactured in every manufacturing plant on the globe will be microchipped. So now we're talking every animal, every fish, every tree, every pair of shoes, every book. What's left?
Well, it's obviously
Us.
insanity.
That's
So
it. It's us. I mean, that's it. They're coming for us. And they're circling the wagons, and they're coming at us from every possible angle. And the end point of all of this is coming for us. And I'll tell you, after 5 years, it's been longer. It was 2002, so after, 7 years? Shudder to say it. After 6 or 7 years of working on this RFID issue and trying to raise awareness about it, I feel like the world finally caught up with what I saw 6 or 7 years ago when I first discovered this technology. I have this sort of unfortunate curse that I'm able to kind of see 5 years ahead of exactly what's going to come. And then I tell people, and they're like, oh, come on. Get out of here. They're never going to do that. In fact, I remember Mark Roberti of the RFID Journal saying, we'll never use RFID to tag people. You're a paranoid. And now look, what are all the big companies looking to do? Stick an RFID tag in your driver's license. So now I'm going to look into the future here again, another 5 to 7 years, and I'll tell you, I think that's probably about how long we have until they start saying mandatory microchips in human beings. So this is, I got to say, this is the moment, because with all of the transportation tracking happening, with all of the food tracking happening, with all of the money being appropriated through this stimulus package, talk about a boondoggle, to move all this stuff forward in a way they never could have done without the economic crisis. $30 billion for a smart grid that would enable information to flow out of your home, not just into your home. That's what's going to enable the RFID smart home of the future, where they can listen to your conversations, where they can know what's in your closet, where they can know every time you take the stick of butter out of the refrigerator and make a note on your healthcare record about it. $30 billion allocated for creating that. Already. Yeah, it just happened. Who noticed, huh? Who noticed in all those pages of stimulus bill? So this is it. I mean, I've referred to this many times as an arms race. They're winning right now, guys. They're winning. They've got the money, they've got the organization, and they've got the technology. Here's the good news. We've got the numbers. Of us by far than there are of them. There always have been. It's the nature of tyranny. And in fact, the only thing that allows them to maintain their position of power is by trying to convince us that there are more of them than there are of us, and they're not. There's about 80% of the world, 70 to 80% depends, who pretty much does nothing. And then of the remainder, there's about 95% who are good and about 5% who are bad. And that 5% who are bad, unfortunately, tend to get into really prominent positions of power and authority over the rest of us, but we still outnumber them immensely. So now is the time, and when I say now is the time, I'm thrilled to see you guys turning out for this. I like to think that this is the first in what is going to become many, many similar events where we turn out in enormous numbers. I want you to look around and bear in mind, so take a look, there's a hallway here that's packed, right? This room is packed. Those of you who are watching on the simulcast video can't see this, but I want to tell you that from what's in this room, it's probably, I'm guessing, about 130 people, probably in this front area, maybe 150. There's probably another 150 people behind you that I'm looking at, and there's an overspill or an overflow room of people who literally could not fit into this room that contains another 50 or 60 people. Right, that's a big number. Where you guys parked? So that's some serious dedication. I'm guessing that there's people here who had to walk like a mile to get here because there is no parking. We're right across the street from a university campus. So even with no parking, you guys have turned out and managed to come out here. Now, I want you, once again, I want you to look around and I want you to imagine, okay, let me paint a scenario, then I want you to look around at your fellow freedom-loving, wonderful people here. Imagine that you are Mayor Susan Narvaez of San Marcos, Texas. Now, who is that? That's the mayor who we are all, I hope every person in this room, is going to show up for tomorrow and say, hi there. We're the citizens, and we're peacefully here to ask that you listen to us. Would you do that? All right.
Yeah.
Do you picture 300 people standing outside of that city hall?
Yes.
All right. What would you do You're used to your city hall meetings being immensely boring. Nobody shows up for them, maybe half a dozen people at most, and they're the same faces you see every week. So you show up and you think it's going to be another boring Tuesday night, and you drive up and you're like, what the heck is going on? What are these people here for? And then you realize they're here for you. Now, is that going to rock or what?
Yeah.
So what do you think? Yeah. What do you think the mayor and the city council tomorrow night, with their dumb little dog microchipping ordinance, what do you think they're going to do when they look out of their car window and go, do I even want to get out of the car? All right, that's what's going to happen. Now, I want that to happen everywhere, all the time. I want to see 1,000 people showing up. I want to see 10,000 people showing up. I want to see when they hold these hearings, when they hold these meetings, the things that I've been going to alone for the last 10 years. I don't want to be alone anymore. I want to see 1,000, 10,000 people showing up. I want it to be like, Life magazine. I'm not old enough to have lived through it. But Life magazine, when I flip through Life magazine and I see the civil rights movement and I see those streets packed with people standing out there going, we've had enough. We've had enough. And we're here to tell you things are going to change. And what do you do when you look out and you see 1,000 people? You going to arrest them all? You can't. What are you going to charge them with? Standing there looking you in the eye and saying, you're our government, please do our bidding? So that's where we need to be. We need to be there yesterday. And I'm glad we're getting there today. And we definitely need to be there tomorrow. All right, on that note, let's go forth. And I'm going to use a great Japanese word here, gambate. Anybody know that word? It's a great one. It means go forth and conquer. So I look forward to seeing you all in San Marcos. We're going to open up question and answers here shortly with all of these wonderful activists assembled in one place. But let me tell you, I hope to see you all there tomorrow. Gambate. Let's kick butt.
She said so much. First, she's got good practice. This whole thing is just so wonderful that again, I'd like to repeat that everyone has assembled together and has a common effort. There's many causes out here, but I think that ID and chipping is an easy one to win. And maybe the word easy is not good. Maybe I should use a different term. But basically, it's the kind of thing we can all get behind. You can talk to your neighbor, and they're not going to say, they're not going to do that. Well, here it is right here in the card. Look at it. Or next time you go to the supermarket, look there. Or when you go to DPS, ask them. By the way, I think there's a lot of people that are getting away from even carrying a driver's license because unless you're in commercial traffic, I understand you don't have to have one. But, that's a different topic for another day. But and please don't tell the trooper that stopped me down in anything different, But also like to say a thank you to George Butler and Deborah Stevens for doing the live broadcast. And I haven't seen Deborah here, but and Rule of Law Radio, and of course Brave New Books again, Harlan and. Q&A, one thing I'd like to announce is that the wireless mic has to be limited to here because of the delay that's there in the other room. So we don't want the wireless to go there, otherwise people will get confused. So anybody from the other room that has a question, you'll have to come up to where Harlan is there, and he's got the mic right there. And so start thinking of who you want to address the question to, and get that to them. Also, thank you to Katherine Allen for sponsoring the airline ticket. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting her, but it's really great. We need people that with real commitment, whether you can give a little bit or you can give time. Most of us patriots are poor. But I think that comes from the heart easier than coming from the pocketbook. But it's good to have people that do both, because I know some of them. And whenever you've got that you can share it with a cause that takes care of your freedom and their freedom and everybody's freedom, our children, our grandchildren's freedom, then it's right. And I think it's right by God. I'd like to also announce that Patrick Tamponi has a radio program, and Catherine is going to be there Thursday on the 5th. And is there any other announcements that... okay, great.
KLBJ is having me on at 8:10 tomorrow morning. It's extremely, my phone's been ringing off the hook, because in the last week, we have the San Marcos event going on against dog chipping. I'm getting phone calls from national radio hosts like Ron Reagan and, I can't remember it, Janet Parshall, a whole ton of people calling me about this story that was in WorldNet Daily about the enhanced driver's licenses, so we're getting the word out about that. Coast to Coast AM, of course, I did a 2-hour appearance the other night, listened to by 12 million people on the national electricity grid that's coming in. Getting lots of calls on that, so we are... Oh, absolutely. So you were among the 12 million, yes. So the numbers, I think, are starting to grow. And I did this the other day on my radio show. I said, I want you to know you're not alone, because sometimes it can be really frustrating, because we're surrounded by people who just don't get it. All of us are. You know, you walk down the street, you try to talk to somebody. Jim, I think it was talking to people, trying to hand out flyers about the dogs. And people were, I'm proud of having Microchip my dog. I think it's a good thing. And so you can kind of feel like a little bit alone if you let yourself. And I just want you to look around at this crowd. And I want you to realize that we're not alone. These are just the people who were able to take time off from kids and family. These are just the people who were able to find parking. These are just the people who were among probably the 5% of people who wanted to be here who actually were fortunate enough to be able to do it. So I want you to multiply this crowd by about 20 of people who specifically probably wanted to be here tonight. And then if you multiply that among people who just didn't hear about it and would have wanted to be here, multiply it by a couple hundred. So we're not alone. There's a huge number of people out there. All right, as long as we're giving thanks, I want to say thank you to Harlan for bringing us all together. A bookstore. Thank you, Harlan. Otherwise, we're stuck with Amazon, baby, and that's not going to look so good, because they track everything you buy. So thank you. And I also want to give a very special word of thanks to Lisa Wilson. Lisa could come up for just a moment. Literally countless hours in the last couple of weeks, putting all of this together, buying things, coordinating, making phone calls, staying up all night. She has done an incredible amount of work to get me out here to Austin. I just want to say a special thank you. Without further ado, I think what we should do is probably pull all the ladies up here into the light, and I'll see if I can readjust our microphone down to where we can sort of all speak into it, and then we'll let you guys go ahead and open up for questions. The other thing, because I've done this before on the book signing, all right, so when we're all done with Q&A, I'm going to be signing books. I'll stay here till dawn if I need to get them all signed. So I'm not going anywhere. Harlan, are you going somewhere at 9? Or?
I'll be here till dawn with you.
So we're all here till as long as it takes. I'm going to caution you that there probably are not enough books for everybody to get a book, and there's probably not enough of stuff. So Harlan ordered a couple cases of books. I brought some stuff from New Hampshire, but we probably don't have enough to go around. So what I'd ask you is restrict yourself to purchasing one book, at least to start, And if you brought your own books, I'm happy to sign them. I don't know, Harlan, you ordered how many books?
I had 65 books.
65. So that may actually, yeah, I think if everybody gets one book, I probably brought like 20 maybe.
Right.
Hardbacks, and then I also brought a special treat, which is the Microchips, which is the Christian version of my book, which you cannot obtain. You can't order it off of Amazon. You can't really get it anywhere. I have like one shelf of them, and I brought like half of my shelf full, and that's pretty much all there is. I think it's out of print, and that's through a whole complicated set of contractual reasons that we're not allowed to reprint that. So I will have some very special copies of this Microchips available too. But again, I'd ask you to limit yourself to one book. And probably the way to do it, Harlan, and correct me if I'm out of line here, but it might make sense to have people sort of, as we're doing the Q&A, kind of one by one go back and get a book and have it in your possession. Please don't stampede, but kind of buy it as we go, and then just when we get to the book signing part, bring up your already paid for book, and I'll be happy to sign it. Does that work?
Sounds great. And if after the Q&A, if we could just have you volunteer and put the chairs sort of off to the side so people don't trip over chairs.
Okay. And given that the people here in the front are at a disadvantage for buying books, if you could make sure that that not all of them get sold right now, that'd be great.
Right.
Okay. So let me see if I can readjust that.
Down.
Mic check. Okay.
Okay, that mic as well. So, if you'd like to ask Catherine a question, you can line up in the front, or you could come back here to this handheld mic. Either way.
That doesn't appear to be on.
It's a great thing that I probably directed people to buy books and release books camp. So do you want to take like a quick break and let people buy books? Or
Do that.
it might be more fair. Okay.
Except for the amazing people in the seats.
How many people here want to buy a book? In this room?
I did.
You ready to go to a couple? Why don't we take like just 5 minutes so people who want to buy books have an opportunity to
Oh, up front, at the counter.
I just don't want to leave people.
Oh my God.
Do you want to field the question in the meantime? Yeah, I'm happy to do that, but I just don't want to.
Dr. Albrecht, a question, and maybe just an awareness thing for people in Austin, that Austin City Shelter and the Humane Society are already mandatory microchipping every animal that goes through them, and we are going to be facing what San Marcos has gone through. I would hope that as many people that can go down tomorrow would go down and be part of the demonstration, and then also whatever package you gave to the San Marcos City Council and Mayor, we'd like a set for ours, and then we need to organize from here because they are a tiny bit away from wanting to push that through themselves.
Talk to me after we're done.
Okay. Well, there's a follow-up question that's sort of along those lines from somebody who handed me a piece of paper. It said, I posted about this meeting on an Austin Talks thread. Most who responded were pro-chips in dogs, so they wouldn't get lost or even die at the hands of the Humane Society before they were found. What would you say to them, Dr. Albrecht?
All right. Are we on? Testing. All right, you can hear me. Stand up so you don't see. What I would say to that is that they probably haven't read the research. There is a growing body of research and information indicating that these chips are not safe. They're probably, in most cases, you're not going to see cancer, you're not going to see dead dogs, but in some cases you will. And I have found that the people who are adamantly in favor of microchips have not done their research and they don't have the facts. So I would encourage them to get a copy of the FAQ, which is up on our antichips.com website. It's free. I put in, I can't even tell you how many months writing that document. And I did it so that people like you would be able to download it or direct people to it and actually set them straight on this stuff. We know, Lisa Wilson has been doing some research online, and some other people as well, that just last March, another dog got a microchip cancer, a cancer around his microchip, on the internet, posted about it. Someone responded to that post. This is just someone who happened to see the post and said, well, gee, the same thing happened to my dog. A cancer formed around the microchip. These are just two random posts off of the internet. How many other people are having this experience and not getting it reported? So our challenge, I think, and this is going to be an interesting challenge, is how to get the word out about this and how to start hearing from those people whose dogs have developed microchip cancers. And then do a press release about every single one of them. And do an event about every single one of them. And turn out a bunch of people in front of every city that has this mandatory microchipping until the word gets out.
Also, in our town of San Marcos, they're trying to use this as an argument for the high euthanasia rates, which is just not simply the truth. Most of those dogs are dumped dogs in Hays County, and so this is really, not getting to the root cause of the problem. And I think the issue that most of our residents are concerned with is it's a personal right to make that choice rather than mandating that. So that would be my answer to the folks who are posting those communiques on the board, is that those who feel equally as strong, we should not be forced to do that if we do have religious considerations or health concerns or privacy issues. Additionally, I think that people should be more proactive in their communities to make sure that we do have adoptions of dogs or leaflet campaigns so people can find their dogs. And what you'll find in a small town is that we do locate our dogs when they get lost. And by the way, this ordinance, if my dog gets picked up the way it's written right now, my dog would be mandatory microchipped in order for me to get her out of the pound. And the city council at this point has said that they will hold her if I have a concern on that. So that to me is not personal freedom for both the individual as well as being a caretaker of your pet.
We have another question.
Hi, this is for Dr. Albrecht. Now, I do believe in personal freedom, and hi everybody. I do believe in personal freedoms. I'm active in the dog community. I do run a couple of websites and a couple of organizations fighting for our freedoms, the freedom to keep our dogs intact if we wish, having the breeds that we want. However, I went through the cancer paper that you posted, that you have written, and there isn't any substantial evidence that shows that it causes cancer.
Do we have a copy of my FAQ?
I have one on PDF here.
It'd be helpful to flip to the actual page that I want to show you.
I have the...
Lisa, I think, is a copy. Lisa Wilson? Where'd Lisa go?
The one where you have 8 studies that show that there was...
Oh, I'm intimately familiar with my paper. Believe me, there's something I want to read from it, which is not something I wrote, or else I would just paraphrase it, but I actually want to read it directly from...
The collection plate is going around for their travel money, if anyone...
Travel and flameless lights for tomorrow night's event, and lots of stuff that we're doing. I'm gonna hold off on that, but I will get to it. I want to have my document in hand, and I want to address that very specifically.
Right, because I'm very concerned. Like, I do not want anybody else touching my animals. I don't want the microchip without my permission, but there just hasn't been any research that shows it's cancer. And in fact, it is diet that is the #1 cause of cancer in animals, and that's what I'm mostly worried about.
All right, well, I'll address it now, and then I want to follow up, because I don't like speaking when I'm speaking of someone else's words and paraphrasing them. But what I'll tell you is that in that document that you have, in fact, you're welcome to read it yourself. There are quotes at the beginning of every one of those articles that address the comments from the researchers who actually did the research.
Right.
This is pathologists, veterinary toxicologists, a whole variety of different people. And in there they say, and I'm going to paraphrase, but I'll read the quote when I get my document, there is an unequivocal association between the microchip implant and the cancer. The cancers were caused by the microchip. The microchip causes cancer. The word cause appears in it. That's not my writing.
Yes.
This is the writing of the researchers in those 8 documents.
I understand, but as a scientist, they like to take liberties. I actually analyzed the data. They had several studies where there was only one subject. In 2 of the study, one subject was a 9-year-old French bulldog. If I had a French bulldog who lived to be he lived to 9 years old and did not have cancer, I would be ecstatic. cancer is the number one killer, and that's a pretty old age for a dog to have cancer and then be implanted at an age, which is kind of strange to me. But statistically, they only had one dog in that study. The second study, they only had a single dog.
That was the study.
It's called a case study, and
That was right up after the fact. But I'll tell you what, hang on.
it's not
because
causal,
I'd like to
it's
have
not
my-
causal, it's
I'd-
correlational.
I'd like to have my document in hand, and I'll be happy to address that.
All right.
I'd like to speak to this for a moment because of something you said, which is that the diet, the nutrition is the number one cause of cancer. And I think what I want to point out is those aren't mutually exclusive. I mean, it's not a situation where anyone's saying every cancer is because of microchips or this is the leading cause of cancer in animals. I do alternative medicine. Our animals are treated holistically. We put a great deal of emphasis on nutrition. We're part of the holistic management and organic sustainable agriculture movement. So I completely agree with you that you have to look at nutrition. You have to look at all these things. The point, though, is even for those of us who are, for instance, very concerned about nutrition, we know there are things that can trigger bad reactions in the body. There's a fabulous, incredible woman who does organic farming in this community who came down with cancer. Now, she has incredible nutrition. There are toxins in the environment. There are toxins in the air. That's what we're dealing with the microchips. It's not you microchip an animal, it will get cancer, and that's why it got cancer. It's a trigger. Well, it can still be something. It may not be the sole cause. It depends how you mean causal. I agree with you. It's not the sole cause. But for instance, when you look at the mice microchip studies, where you had much broader numbers and you started seeing statistically significant results.
They didn't do a chi-square test looking at the normal rate of cancer with rats or mice without microchips, comparing those with ones that were implanted. They just implanted all the mice, separated them into groups, gave some of them certain chemicals, and they just said X number got cancer. But they didn't.
You're not on the mic, so I'm going to sort of paraphrase, and I hope you'll accept my paraphrasing, which is they weren't doing a controlled study to look at microchips in cancer in mice because they were implanting all of their mice. So you're right, it's not the perfect study you'd want to look at. That doesn't mean there's not a relationship.
All right, I just want to read a couple of quotes from these studies, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on them because this isn't really the sole purpose of this, but I think it's important that we clarify this particular issue. I'm reading for the Lake Calvé study in 2006. This is when 1,260 mice were microchipped and 4.1% developed cancer. Most of the animals, this is a quote from the document from page 258 of that study, most of the animals with microchip-associated tumors died prematurely due to the size of the masses, or the deaths were spontaneous and attributed to the masses. One of the most serious or potentially serious disadvantages of the microchip implantation is the possibility that foreign body-induced tumors may develop. That's Lake Calvé, 2006. I'll read you another one. Can I switch mics so I can hold it?
That's just for the radio, Catherine. It's not going to amplify. No.
Here, hold my mic. We'll get that. I can face it.
Thank you.
Electronic microchip technology as a means of animal identification may affect animal moribundity and mortality, in other words, illness and death rates, due to the large size and rapid growth of microchip-induced tumors, as well as the occurrence of metastases. That's Elcock 2001, in which 1,040 rats were microchipped and 0.8% or close to 1% developed a microchip cancer. They go on to write, most tumors arising from foreign bodies are malignant and have a rapid growth rate, killing the animal in a matter of weeks. Read another one. Blanchard et al. 1999, in which 177 genetically modified mice were implanted with microchips, and 10.2% of them developed cancer. Here they write, quote, there was an unequivocal or unmistakable association between the microchip implant transponder and sarcoma. Another one, the presence of the foreign body microchip transponder may elicit tissue reactions capable of generating genotoxic byproducts. Now, this is a particularly interesting study because it's one that the industry has tried to use to discredit the cancer connection. Let me tell you why. This study involved a special type of mouse. It is the genetically modified P53 plus or minus mouse. Now, that sounds all really technical, but there's something important about this. When researchers are trying to test whether something is genotoxic, in other words, whether it is a genetic toxin and actually causes things like cancer, they don't want to have to implant thousands of mice in order to see that maybe 1 out of 1,000 gets has this response to test whether something's a genotoxin. So what they've done is they've developed a special type of mouse that only develops cancer in the presence of genotoxins. Without genotoxins, they don't get cancer. And what they found was when they put these microchips into those mice, rather than 1 and 2% getting cancer, 10% developed cancer, which is very clear evidence that these microchips are genotoxic. That's why they use those mice. Had they not been genotoxic, they would not have developed the cancer. So there's a very serious issue there. Now, I'll tell you why they believe this is happening. When you implant a foreign body into living tissue, it creates an irritation reaction around it. There are actual cellular changes around it as the body tries to adapt to this thing in there. There's actually like a little shell that forms around the microchip, and that is where all of these cancers originated, is in those cells. They are irregular cells, and in some cases they go a little nuts and they turn into a cancerous tumor. Let me read just one more. It's the one with the word cause in here. Let me see if I can find that one. All right, this is Tillman et al. 1997, in which 4,279 mice were implanted with a microchip, and of those, 0.8% or close to 1% developed cancer. Here's the quote from page 200 of that study. The neoplasms, in other words, the cancers, induced in the present investigation are clearly due to the implanted microchips. Then they go on. Further information on tumors induced by microchips, et cetera, et cetera. There's one more. There's a cause. Here's another one. Investigators using implanted devices need to be aware of foreign body cancer development, tumorigenesis, when evaluating the results of long-term studies using mice. 2,000 mice in this study by Keith Johnson, and 1% developed cancer there. This goes on and on. So this is what these studies said. They literally come out and say these chips cause cancer. Right? I hope I cleared that up.
All backslash to teach research and methodology, and I was only interested in it. When I first thought, I freaked out and said,
Anyway.
Moving on. Okay, further questions?
It's mandatory. I just want to say it's.
We're glad to ask the question.
Hello?
Okay. Yes. Well, I'm worried about the health of your animals. I just want to say, not felt, which is the end.
Thank you very much.
To the best of my knowledge, there's nobody who's been implanted with a Verichip implant without their knowledge. There are a couple thousand people around the country, or excuse me, around the world who have been implanted with these with consent, or at least some degree of consent. You may know that a couple years ago we turned out to the Alzheimer's Community Care Center in West Palm Beach, Florida, to protest the implantation of Alzheimer's patients whose very disease meant that they did not give consent because they weren't in a position to give consent. Because of that, we have a piece of legislation that we're trying to get introduced here in Texas called the Bodily Integrity Act. It's up on our website at antichips.com. You click on legislation. And we met this morning, actually, with Lisa Wilson and I went in and met with Representative Patrick Rose, who spoke very highly of you, by the way, Judith. And we did get them a copy of the legislation, and they said that if not in this legislative session, that they will try to introduce it in the next. Yeah.
Dr. Albrecht, is there any use of micro RFID tags? You want to get on my Is there any use of RFID tags that you feel that would be useful and productive for society?
Well, I would be the first to acknowledge that it's more convenient to breeze through the check stand by just pressing your hand to a reader device. It would certainly be more convenient to have all of your taxes paid by the mile. It would certainly be more convenient to be able to track and locate everything on the globe, but at what cost? You know, that it's the same thing I used to say about the frequent shopper card at the grocery store. You know, they raise the prices and artificially lower them back down if you let them record all your purchases. Sure, I'd like to save 15 cents on a package of rice, but at what cost? So when you look at the potential upsides of this technology, more convenient, faster, easier, you know, the list goes on, maybe safer. When you look at that potential list of upsides and then you contrast it with the potential list of downsides, I think that the equation becomes really clear, that the downsides really enormously outweigh any possible benefits. And as I've said in the past, I don't want to save 15 cents on a packet of rice and lose my freedom.
We have a question back here.
Hi, Catherine. This is directed to Catherine.
Speaking back right here.
I'm Tim with Austin Energy. Thanks once again for helping me shut down the thumb scanning over at Austin Energy.
Oh.
And unfortunately, it is back up again.
You shut down the thumb scanning at Austin Energy.
And with Catherine's help, with a lot of angry city employees, we...
I'm sorry, can we get him on the mic?
It's like, it
He's
feeds
too
back.
close to which?
This speaker over here, I think.
Yeah, we got feedback. Oh, yeah, I'm pretty loud mouth anyway. But on the smart grid stuff, they've been blowing out a bunch of stuff on the smart grid. They're really selling it real hard here. And I've got everybody motivated to go up against the thumb scanners again, but I need some ammo for going up against this smart grid. Is there any resources we can look at?
You guys are right in their sights. I'll tell you, Austin is one of like a dozen test cities around the globe.
I wear red, white, and blue because I am a bullseye there, too. I'm just in the target, so...
Yeah, how many of you guys are living in a house where they control your thermostat remotely by radio?
That's the big thing they're pushing.
I'm telling you, they're doing it, yeah. And it's not just going to be your thermostat. It's going to be your dryer, your toaster, your refrigerator, and then once they have two-way communication, everybody's looking at me like, what are you talking about? This is a smart grid. The idea is to, instead of having electricity flowing one way into your home, that data and information from your appliances is going to flow two ways, back out through the electrical grid to them. Yeah, that's the plan. $30 billion just got allocated to that. Without the stimulus package, they could have never done that. Never in a million years could they have gotten away with that without a debate, without a discussion, without something, and yet they slip it into an enormous stimulus package and everybody goes, okay. So, you need to take a closer look at what they put in that stimulus package because this is stuff that they never could have done otherwise. This is like their wish list come true. So the idea on this smart grid, who's salivating over it is all of the companies that we write about in Spy Chips who want to put the RFID reader in your refrigerator so they know when you take the milk out, so they can make you a grocery list. Won't that be convenient? You were asking about the benefits. Won't it be convenient when they'll just automatically make you a grocery list based on what you take out and don't put back? Oh, you're out of butter. Oh, there it is, right there on your electronic list on the front of your smart fridge. So that's the kind of benefits they're going to be touting to us, and that's the carrot, not a very good carrot. Let me tell you what the stick is. The stick is they're going to double and even triple our electrical rates.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was the stick at the supermarket. They raised the prices, man. We saw Kraft, what is it, the Velveeta cheese spread in Waco. Right? This was actually written up in the Waco newspaper. Kraft cream cheese, Velveeta, when they first came out with the frequent shopper cards, $4.99, $3.99, right on the box. Manufacturer's suggested retail price from Kraft, $3.99. They raised the price to $5.99. So they took a $4 thing of cheese, made it $6 on the shelf, and then they gave you the awesome discount if you scanned your frequent shopper card of $2 off. That's how they do it. It's carrot and stick, but the carrot doesn't exist.
Hello?
Hey, Catherine. It's good to meet you. I listen to you every day. I actually work in the pet industry. I work at a pet store. And what, if I'm not mistaken, was the original idea about microchipping your animals so that if they became lost, you could find them? Do you have any stats about how many animals are found?
Actually, a fair number.
Really?
There have actually been a fair number returned to their owners. The concern that I have, though, is the same concern that I have in tagging babies in hospitals and all of the other things that they're doing in the name of sort of saving babies and saving animals. Once you become reliant on the technology, then you stop doing common sense things like just putting a tag on your animal with a phone number on it. Most animals, when they wander away from home, they get found by a neighbor. We found 2 dogs running in our backyard not long ago. And what did we do? We brought the dogs in. They were really friendly and sweet. We looked at the tag. It had a phone number. We picked up the phone and we said, we have your dog. And within a couple of hours, they were there getting the dog. Right? Now, what happened to my good friend back there? Hello, Tequila. Kayla's experience, she had a dog. They picked up the dog. They said, well, they tried calling her. She wasn't home. But then they said, well, we'll just call the Animal Society and have the dog, have them deal with the dog. And then they scan, I guess she didn't have a microchip. But that's what they're doing nowadays. People aren't even putting the phone numbers on their animals anymore. And when your neighbor finds your dog, they're forced to call the local humane society where there's a chance that animal's going to get euthanized.
Oh, no, I'm against it. There's no mistake about that. I just was curious because I work in the area of town where a lot of people think that if they do that, their animal will be safe and they'll be able to find them. So I just
Well, there's
wondered-
2 pieces to that, and here's I think what really reveals the fact that these guys are disingenuous about saving animals. If you don't pay to register that number in the database, then they will not store it.
Oh.
So you can have a microchip in your dog, and they can know who the microchip belongs to and know your name and address, but if you haven't paid the fee, they won't tell the vet. They won't tell the Humane Society, and they'll kill your dog.
Well, your local vet will have the number registered, you know. But, I mean, like, my dog, I got him from Town Lake. He got shipped at Town Lake. And so he has a passive RFID in his skin. And I haven't explored the option of removing it yet. It's not a transponder locator. It's just a number. And I haven't paid to have him registered in the pet database. But in my neighborhood, if anyone were to scan him, they'd find out from our local veterinarian that he's mine, or by calling the city because it's on record with the city, the town.
Well, you would be amazed at the number of animals who are euthanized every year who have a microchip in them, because the companies that are storing these records are not doing it out of the goodness of their hearts to save your dog. They're doing it to make money, and if you don't pay the money, they'll kill your dog.
That's right.
See, I think there are people who are lining up back by the mics. If you have
What can you say about microfilaments in vaccine needles?
Not much. You mean? I'm sorry.
Well, I had not read your book, but I had read some other research many years back. I'm thrilled I'm going to get your book. But I had run across some studies where they had inserted some microfilaments in some infants, newborns in California in a study.
Was this for identification or tracking purposes?
Yes.
I'm not familiar with that research.
There's a government study. I mean, it's public record. And I just didn't know if you knew much more about how widespread it was. This was like 8 years ago.
This is the first I've heard. The closest I can come to thinking about that, there's a company called Raflatech that makes RFID tags that are chipless. They're like, we talk about them in our book, they're the size of a baby's eyelash, and it's just a little fiber. And it can't be scanned from a very long distance because it's small, but when you scan it, it does give off a unique signature because each one's different, and then they translate that into a number. So the only reason that's particularly relevant in this fight, and I certainly would like to see that research, is I caution people, if you're working on legislation, do not include the word microchip or restrict yourself to microchip in the legislation because there's other technologies that do the same thing without a chip, like the Somark tattoo, which is a remotely readable RF tattoo, or these Raflatech chipless ID tags. But please send me that research. I'd like to know about that.
Can you tell us a little bit more about Somark?
Somark, yeah, I'm not sure where they're going with it. This was some college students who actually won an award for coming up with a way to take tattoo ink, or tattoos. It's kind of like a tattoo process, and actually embed electromagnetically responsive metallic ink into a physical body. So they can put it into a cow, they can put it into a horse, they can put it into a person, and instead of just being visibly readable, it actually responds like a passive RFID. You hit it with a signal, and it sends back a signal. And it's chipless, so it wouldn't be covered by all of this RFID legislation that has been passed in the various states.
Is it visible?
I've never seen it. They're really secretive about it.
Not visible.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. It depends on how deep you put it in the body.
Reads through hair, too.
Yes, it does. It will read through hair, and at that point, it'd be hard to see.
Is it true that the...
I just wanted to say some of it's visible. It depends, because I've seen demonstrations about the tattoo, RFID tattooing is what they're calling it, at the industry conferences where they're promoting NAIFs. And this is very much trying to be sold as the cheap and easy solution for RFID tagging all of our animals without physically implanting the microchips. But the tests they've done that they've been sharing at the conferences do show a visible tattoo. So it would be, a registration number for the animal that would look like a normal tattoo, because a lot of people do tattoo their animals, but it could be picked up by the readers.
Okay, hi, Katherine, and this is Sheila Dean as well. I went to the Campo meeting tonight and gave the Campo staff that does our toll roads showed them a copy of this book that I came and purchased here earlier, and let her know that you were here and the work that Sheila's been doing. And I was wondering, passed out flyers of the stopping party that Sheila Dean had down spoke at the Travis County Commissioners Court and announced that they were having that party. What is the most effective way, other than people such as myself that don't ever join a group, but that always pick up things like Sheila, and I see boat rescues here, and yourself, what's the most effective way you think, other than the way that I'm going about it, as far as spreading the word? Because there's a big digital divide in this community. There's a lot of people that aren't on the internet, but what's the best approaches that y'all think are most effective?
Well, word of mouth always works. This is great. I show up, word of mouth, telling your neighbor, picking up the phone and calling your relatives, the people that you care about, that are closest to your heart, and telling them whatever concerns you, it should concern them. These are very practical things. If you attend a synagogue, a church, or other religious institutions, you can tell them about it. You can, if you you can pass out lit. We have plenty of tools online on 511campaign.org that you can print out. You can hand out stickers. You can get as guerrilla as you want about promoting these things. Recruit a team of skateboarders to go through UT campus and wallpaper with wheat paste, which is pretty California, but I don't want to waste your time on that. But there's all kinds of ways. You can call Katherine Albrecht and say, Katherine, I'm really concerned about what's happening in my community. Is it going to happen to me? And or call up. There are so many ways. You can contact your News 8, your neighborhood television station, and tell them, this is bothering me. How can we stop this? There's so many ways to involve yourself. And then there's the traditional way. Pick up the phone and call your legislator and make them concerned about it, because they're the decision-making parties, and you do have more control in place than you would ever think.
I was wondering, why not? I think an untapped resource is do brown bag lunches at the tech companies. I mean, there are so many people that come in that really get involved in this stuff.
If anyone's interested, we're planning a protest at Identix Biometrics. And it's something of note about Identix is that it is an L1 Technologies subsidiary. L1 Technologies has the federal contract for all of the biometrics in the passports and the licenses and anything that is a U.S. identifier. Probably told this, but I know for a fact that Identix has the contract for the entire state of Texas's biometrics, and they are sitting right here in Round Rock. So it's that close to you. It's Dell. Well, I don't know if it's Dell exactly, but this is the Silicon Valley of Texas. And it is more important for you Austinites to act on this, because you're sitting in these legislators' districts. So the burden on you to make change where technology is involved is heavier on you than any other person in the state. You're going to be making the decisions for the rest of the state. Mark Strama, Diana Maldonado, Dan Gaddis, Tan Parker, Ann Chen Button. These are people in Dallas and in Austin, and some of them in Houston, but they're all on that technology committee, and they need to hear from you if this is not something that you want in your life.
Okay.
Judith actually I was going to talk about social media because that's my area of expertise, but Judith actually said, hey, letters to the editor. Letters to the editor are exceptionally effective in our small town, and your policymakers do read that. One thing that we did, how we got our whole protest offline was through Facebook, through social media. And now that we've got lots of people talking about this online through Facebook, we also have people on MySpace posting bulletins, and people are definitely plugged in. If you look at the literature, people are doing, students are reading Facebook more than they are their textbooks. So if you want to get the word out, that would probably be the most expedient way, because you have instant communication. That was exceptionally effective. But I agree, the letters to the editor, that's something your policymakers will be reading more so than Facebook.
Looks like we have 4 or 5 more questions, and then we'll cut it off after that.
Hi, Catherine. My name is Babs Warren. Those yellow flowers up there on that table, I picked them for you today. My mother started growing them 40 years ago, okay?
Oh, wow.
So you'll know that we
That's
grow
beautiful.
things right in Texas, okay? My mother is dead. She died in 1997. What I wanted to say was, every day of my life, I tell somebody this story, okay? It's what I heard in the 60s, and I'm 76 years old. I was in my 20s when I learned about it. And my mother didn't think that I should tell anybody because they think I was a kook. And I still have people telling me that now, that I've been trying to help with the aspartame issue. I heard, and I saw, what's his name, Rockefeller, talk about the Illuminati. I didn't know what it was. And the top 1% of the people in the world who are associated with the kings and queens bloodlines were going to control us. There were only 300 people in this organization. He introduced Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney said, if you don't remember anything else I've said tonight, remember this. He said, by the time the one world order is in place for a takeover by the United Nations and by the soldiers that are going to be in our country from other countries, there's only going to be a third or a fourth of the entire world alive. Now, what I want to say is, I think all this chipping and everything has to go along with their wanting to depopulate the world, which is what Dick Cheney said that day. Okay? What do you think about that?
Well, I can only speak to what Aaron Russo said, which is, and he told me this story as well that you've probably seen on the internet, and this is that Aaron Russo was told by David Rockefeller, is that right?
Yeah.
That there really is a plan to chip everybody, that there really is a plan to own us and control us. As far as depopulation goes, I mean, certainly if you look at the sustainable development, which has gone into every county in this country on the county level, the sustainable development plans are actually about reducing population, reducing where we're going to be allowed to live, how much resources we're going to be allowed to consume, and how are they going to control that? Well, they're going to know because you're scanning your frequent shopper cart, because you're presenting your RFID tag driver's license every time you want to drive somewhere in your car. You know, first it's watching, then it's controlling. So they want to know where you go in your car today. Tomorrow they're going to say, you're only allowed 50 miles this month. Use it wisely.
Today's Texas Independence Day. Marcus want to talk to the woman who was having the issues here in Austin with the microchip, because we're Texans and we stick together when it comes to freedom. So let's make sure we mobilize Central Texas to stop it first regarding our critters, and then we're going to keep them out of the human beings.
I just wanted to tell you, you may take those flowers home, they're for you.
Well, thanks to all of you for taking time away from your families and sharing your knowledge and experience with us. My question is more towards Katherine. Understanding that technology seems to proliferate at geometric rates, do you see nanotechnology being a force in the future with this? I mean, I can just think of some, 1984 scenarios where everything you put in your body has some nano-type technology in it, and everything you pee out or spit out or blood that comes out of you has some type of record in it that might even be biological.
The question, because I think we're having microphone issues, the question is where does this go? Does nanotechnology play a role in the future of this? Will the technology expand exponentially to the point where it encompasses every aspect of our lives? I would say yes. One of the writers who's had a big impact on me, and he's working for the other team fully, is Ray Kurzweil, who wrote the book The Singularity. And it's a big, thick book. It's like 500 pages long. The only part that I found of any value in that book whatsoever was the first couple of pages, where he describes the growth curve for technology. And it's pretty interesting. If you're familiar with an exponential curve, what happens is you start off kind of slowly getting a little bit bigger, and lots of time goes by, and you sort of make little strides. And then you get to the point where it starts curving, and now over a short amount of time it's going up and up and up. And then you get to the point where literally in a day you're having more
progress, if you want to call it that, or more of an advance than you had over a period of 1,000 years prior to that. Technology, the growth of technology, is an exponential curve, and I believe, just as does Ray Kurzweil, who, by the way, wants us all to become one with the machine. That's his goal, so he's not on our team at all. But I do believe, I agree with him, that we are at this point of the curve. What is happening now in a period of 1 month within technology would have taken 50 years to happen, even just the last span of time we looked at. The reason this is important is that you need to understand, see, we have this human tendency to expect the future to be like the past. And when you look at how long it took to get from, the Wright brothers to the point where we have jumbo jets to the point where we're traveling in outer space, and you say, well, gee, that took about 100 years, maybe about 60, 70 years. So in 60 or 70 years, then we'll make sort of the same amount of progress. So what you're not understanding is that we're now in this curve. So in 6 or 7 months, we're going to make that kind of progression. In 6 or 7 days, eventually, we're going to make that kind of progression. In 6 or 7 hours after that, we're going to make that progression. In 6 or 7 seconds, we're going to be making that kind of technological leap. And when we get to that point, which he calls the singularity, where our technology is growing so quickly that we cannot even comprehend it, then that's the point when many of these futurists believe that we will actually be downloading our consciousness into some giant technological grid, that we won't even have bodies anymore, that we'll be able to get around this whole issue of populating the planet by just saying, those sacks of meat, we don't need those, they consume resources. So let's save the resources for the butterflies and the trees, and we'll just upload ourselves into some giant machine. And when you look at how they describe the giant machine, it sounds an awful lot like, how about this one? Peter Cochrane, Cochrane. Read some of his writing. He's a big futurist over in Europe. He's won all sorts of awards, and they take him pretty seriously there. He looks forward to the day when we all upload ourselves into a single entity, which will then travel out into the universe looking for host bodies to inhabit.
So we reject the ones again.
Are you familiar with Morgellons nanovirus?
I'm sorry, Morgellons?
Have you ever heard of the Morgellons nanovirus? There's speculation that says that has to do something with nanotechnology. It's something that the medical establishment has never seen. It's a disease that creates like glass-like shards or something that develop, fibers that develop into the body.
This is various Morgellons disease, which has been surfacing actually quite a bit here in Texas. I think Texas is like a center for the epidemic of this thing, or the outbreak of this at least. There is a lot of scientific research being done on Morgellons, which indicates that it is a real syndrome. It's not imaginary. There are real things happening to those folks. We don't yet know why, and it's just the kind of thing that would happen for some nanotechnology to get out of a laboratory, replicating carbon nanotubes, and sort of morph that with some DNA, and who knows what happened. So I definitely agree with you. It's extremely creepy, and there's a lot going on in those laboratories that we don't know about.
Quick question. Are you familiar? The gentleman was talking about Somark earlier. The original designers of that mark originally named it 666, but decided not to because of the computer, and you're nicknamed the Beast. Is that just an urban legend? Or
I don't know. The question was whether the designers of the Somark wanted to call it 666 and then decided maybe that wouldn't be too cool. I'll tell you that when the mark of the beast comes, and I fully and firmly, as a committed, Bible-believing, born-again Christian, will guarantee you it is going to come. Right? I will tell you this, it's not going to be hidden. It's not going to be some secret thing that you're not going to know you're taking, because these guys are overt. They'll come out and call it the Beast. Hey, you want to take the Mark of the Beast, TM, with a 666 right on it, with a little copyright symbol on it? That's how these guys operate. In fact, the Hugs and Kisses program, you guys know what that was? That was the RFID tagged, the non-implantable product by the Verichip Corporation. It's the ankle bracelet they were putting on the babies in the hospitals. Half of babies in Ohio now born today get this thing slapped onto their ankles before they have their cord cut. It's like their first introduction. Welcome to the world, little baby. It's an RFID tagged world. Boom, and you're part of it.
Wow.
They renamed it. Guess what they renamed it? Hugs and Kisses wasn't good enough. They renamed it the X mark. So, yeah. And they know. They've been fielding concerns over the mark of the beast for 10 years now. They do it on purpose.
Okay, just 3 more questions.
3 more questions.
Comment and question. The local Austin, the Austin Animal Shelter, When they're sending out their checkups, they're leaving a little sticker on it that says microchips save lives. That's lives. Just throw that there. The other question is that there is a thing called stimuluswatch.org, and if you go and click on Austin, the very top thing is the initiation of tracking boxes having nothing to do with the toll roads, but to send out signals to the Texas toll tags. And would like to hear what you had to say about that, because that right there is going hand in hand with, I forgot what the...
Stimuluswatch.org?
Yes.
Okay, stimuluswatch.org. I can't wait to check that out.
It's going hand in hand with the cameras that are going up about every eighth of a mile along the major sections
There's
of
two
highway.
things fully on their agenda right now. Two things I want you guys to watch for. One of them is food control. That's why you're hearing so much about food safety. That's why somebody gets a sniffle from eating something, or somebody throws up after eating something, and it's all of a sudden headline news on CNN. All right, that's because they want funding, they want money, and they want power over the food supply. So be on the lookout for that. They're going after our food. The other thing they're going after is our automobile traffic, our ability to travel by car. They've locked up being able to track all of our other transportation, but not the car yet. That's why you're going to hear a whole bunch about toll roads. You're going to hear a whole bunch about inspection stickers, a whole bunch about funding highways, a whole bunch. Is this they couldn't just throw some stimulus money at it? Come on. So you're going to be hearing all of these, and in every case, look at the solution that they propose. The problems are real. I mean, we have real problems with our food. I mean, our food's killing us. So there's serious problems with the food, but the solution is not giving the FDA more power to control and track the food. They're now openly using the word food surveillance as a good thing. Openly using it. I just saw it last week, and I think it was CNN. So food surveillance and travel surveillance. That's what's coming. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, you talk food, and I have to jump up. You know, my obsession has been NACE, which is the animal ID tracking, but it does not end there. Last summer, there was an FDA hearing, and my favorite excerpt from that was some bright young technology guy getting up and explaining to the FDA officials how we could laser etch barcodes into the skin of every tomato. And this was his proposal. And perhaps actually an even more terrifying thing was an FDA official's question. Because the realities of food safety, by the way, for those who haven't really looked into the joys of salmonella and E. coli poisoning, is you don't eat something and throw up. You eat something and 5 days later you're sick as a dog. And the FDA guy comes to you, or the CDC guy comes to you, and you go, what did you eat 3, 4, and 5 days ago? And you go, I don't have the first clue. And that's why they have trouble finding out what are the causes of food poisoning outbreaks. So here is an FDA official's concept of how we solve this biological problem. He wants to run a consumer education campaign to convince everybody to save the little barcoded stickies off of every piece of food, so that they then can come to you and say, where's your calendar showing everything you've eaten? So this is where they are, and there are food safety bills in Congress right now that are dealing with food traceability, and they talk, some of them actually mandate fully electronic systems, other of them don't mention electronic systems, but if you're going to track every tomato, kind of hard to figure out how you do it without massive databases. So there is very active movement both on NAIS and the broader food issues to track our food supply, and this is really the hot issue for FDA and for Congress. This is the code word, traceability. So now I think Sheila also had some stuff she wanted to talk about. Yes.
Okay, Silicon Valley in Texas. All right, so the question was regarding the tags. We have the benefit, 511 campaign donated an RFID fryer that's right here at Brave New Books. The technology is not responsible for working. The point of them putting it in your license is to get you to pay for it. Not for it to work, just to get you to pay for it, okay? So if it malfunctions and it doesn't work on your vehicle, that's okay. Okay, just put it in the microwave and here at Brave New Books and forget about it. If you don't want the toll tag, you go to the legislators, whatever. But you don't have to put up with the technology. If the technology, I have one rule, if the technology is meant to break you, you break the technology. All Aquarians know this is the secret to living.
Good.
sure about the microwave because the telltale char marks might give you away. I think a hammer might be better.
Check. I guess it is working out. Hey, Katherine, you were talking earlier about how there's pros and cons for RFID. Maybe you can have that convenient grocery list printed out for you, but that's outweighed for the negatives. And I would just agree in that instance. But in general, I believe that technology in and of itself is neither inherently good or evil. It's more people that carry out good or evil actions. But given that, do you think time would be better spent trying to replace the people in power with good people, or just eliminating all the technology so the bad people can't abuse it? And I guess two parts. Which do you think would be more effective, and which do you think would be more realistic? And then one final hypothetical. Given what you know today, if you could travel back 50 or 60 years and stop the development of computers in general, would you do so?
That's an interesting question. We opened Spy Chips with a quote by C.P. Snow, who was a writer for the New York Times. And in 1971, before we even had RFID, certainly, he said, technology is a queer thing. It gives you great gifts with one hand, and it stabs you in the back with the other. And I would say that technology has always been that way from the very beginning. Technology is both good and bad. I believe that was actually the trade-off that was made in the Garden of Eden. You will have the knowledge of God. It will ultimately kill you, but you will be like God. And what was the tree that was eaten from? It was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And I believe that that's actually what our technology is. So yes, technology can do tremendously good things. It can do tremendously evil things. It can destroy the entire planet many, many times over, and may well do that. Now, if I could travel back 6 years, would I undo it? I don't think I'd be in a position to have that kind of influence 50 or 60 years ago. I will point out that the very first computer to be built on U.S. soil was built by IBM. It was called the MARC, indeed, in 1940s. And the MARC, later when they came out with another one, they renamed them the Mark I and the Mark II. And its first official job was to do the numerical and mathematical calculations to create the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima. So would I undo that if I could? Yeah, I probably would.
One final question.
Hello, Katherine. I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad all of you all are here tonight because this is our fight. And by God, there's so many fronts that we have to go on. It's very hard to pick and choose. I just want to let everybody know that here in Travis County, our wonderful, magnanimous, in Austin, our wonderful police chief has decided to enact what they call cite and release, which is another form of control where they don't actually arrest you anymore, take you down and book you if you're driving without a valid license. So that's one good thing. You're not going to get thrown in jail if you don't have a valid license. One of the other things that I wanted to mention is that now Texas has available an EDL, an enhanced driver's license. It's available for people who cross the border, etc. And I understand that really has a longer range on it than people are telling. I'm the one who brought up the idea about SOMARC. The original articles that I read on that said it was readable within an area of 4 feet, which would be just about the right height if you were going over a scanner on the highway so it could tell where you were. And the article from the developer said that this would be useful in locating lost soldiers. So if they can only read it 4 feet away, how are they going to know where the soldiers are? I just want to let you know that this is a great thing that everybody's doing. We plan on being there with you tomorrow. We want to have more people, so everybody here, go out and tell all your friends that this is what's going on. It's real. Real ID is not dead. Sheila, you're doing a great job on that. They've put it off on a national scale, but they're trying to hit all of the governors with this, where they enact a RFID in all of the states individually. Now, if our fight is at the state level, then that's where we need to go. I would concentrate on the state levels in everybody's hometown and everybody's capital and try and do this. I just want to have one final question. If you had one area to concentrate on, and I know yours is RFIDs, but for most of us around here, regular people, would it be food? Would it be enhanced driver's licenses? Would it be, the mark of the beast?
Are you asking me?
Yes, I'm asking you.
If there was one thing I could focus on and have all of you focus on, it would be finding each other. Number one, first and foremost. Yeah. It's a frustrating frustrating experience to go out with a flyer or with information and talk to 50 people and only one of them hears you? And I would say ignore the 49 who don't. They are irrelevant. Even if they heard you, they're useless. Right? You want to find the one person. So you're not out there to change hearts and minds. You are out to find the kindred souls. And they're out there and they want to join us and they don't know we're here tonight. So I think that's what we need to do. Don't cast your pearls before swine. Do not waste your time talking to people who cannot hear you. Plant a seed and move on. And then find the people who are ripe trees with all kinds of fruit, just waiting to put it towards the cause. That's what we need to be doing. Find that 2 people out of 100 or that 5 people out of 100 and bring them to the next meeting. Bring them to San Marcos tomorrow. Let's have a huge turnout there. Get people involved. In that way, when something comes down the pike, when Judith or Lisa or Sheila has an event, then we've got 1,000 people who can show up and back them up. And that way we don't all have to be reinventing the wheel. We can just be a force. We can be a body to show up. We can be the presence that works on these things. Because, you don't need everybody to be an organizer. You need a lot of people just to show up and say, we're going to stand here until you guys change. You look at the Civil Rights Movement. There were only a handful of names that we remember from that period. But who really changed the world? It was the people standing out there in the streets saying, we're going to block this road until you change. That's who changed it. So we need to find those people and get them blocking the roads. Oh yeah, let me give you an answer about Twitter. And then we've got a couple of announcements. We really need you in San Marcos at 6 p.m. That's when we need you. We really, really need you in San Marcos at about 6:30, but 6 would be better because that's when the city council members are going to start arriving. They have a 7 p.m. city council meeting, and we are on the agenda to discuss this. So what's going to happen, all of the Austin folks, and I hope every person in this room comes and brings 2 or 3 other people. I'd like to see 1,000 people outside of that San Marcos City Hall tomorrow. So when you show up, the Austin folks are going to hold vigil outside while the San Marcos folks, with all that beautiful backup, are going to go in there and say, hi, City Council. We represent all those people out there and more, and we'd like to talk to you about this chipping requirement. So we're all going to sort of play the cast of characters that plays backup while the San Marcos people go in there and do their thing. And that's going to be Lisa and her colleagues there. And if they let me testify, I'll do it too. But otherwise, I'll just kind of show up and look as intimidating as I know how to show.
Catherine, have them wave to the cameras and say, we're coming to a town near you soon.
No kidding. So as far as tomorrow goes, we do have some signs, but it'd be great if you guys could make your signs. Have them be respectful, have them be positive. I found that these events always go better if you dress really nicely, maybe even wear a suit and tie like you just showed up from your, really well-paid lawyer job or whatever, and show up with your kids and show up with your balloons and your stroller and your happy little dog and be as nice as you know how to be, because we're going to intimidate by our numbers. We're not going to intimidate through any other means. It's going to be our numbers that are going to scare them. So given how scary our numbers are going to be, we need to try to be as unscary as possible, which is if I dress like this, I do, and wear a suit when I go to testify, because my message is scary enough for those guys. So show up tomorrow with signs. If you have a flameless candle, we've been asked not to have real candles or real flames because of the risk of fire, and with the drought, I take that very seriously. So if you'd like to bring a flashlight or one of those little tea lights and go into the dollar store and buy a couple of tea lights and bring those, wouldn't it be beautiful to see all of us out there with the lights and the... we do have some national coverage that's going to be taking some video at the event. We're going to get great television coverage. We have 2 of the Austin television stations going down there. KI will be there. KTXN, thank you. We're just there today, I don't know it. They're going to be there. We've got KLBJ covering it. We've got a lot of media coverage, and so having your numbers out there is going to be terrific. Those of you who want to join us earlier, let me tell you a couple of other things I'm doing tomorrow. I will be doing a luncheon, a more intimate event than this, presumably, from 12:30 to 1:30 at Grin's Restaurant. This is all, by the way, up on my website at KatherineAlbrecht.com. If you click on Texas Protest, you can find it, along with addresses. I will also be speaking at the Texas State University Quad in San Marcos from 3 to 4 p.m. And then at 4:30, we're all going to get together at a coffee house called Wake the Dead, where we're going to be making signs, kind of giving each other pep talks before we go. And then from there, we're going to head over to the dog park at 6 p.m. across from the San Marcos City Hall. And then from there, when the sun sets around 6:30, we'll start lighting our little flameless candles and encourage the people who are going to go in to do battle in the City Hall meeting. So that's tomorrow. I really hope that you guys can come. That's going to be the real test, because this event tonight, my 800 media contacts don't really care about a book signing. I mean, we all care, but they don't. They care about a protest big time, and that's what's going to bring out the television cameras and the news media and the CNNs and the ABCs and the Good Morning Americas and all the other people who are covering this. It's going to be your numbers tomorrow. That's when they're looking and watching for that. Yeah.
You're also on KLBJ tomorrow, is that correct?
I'm on KLBJ tomorrow morning at 8:10 a.m., and they're going to give me either 1 or 2 segments, so 8:10 in the morning. Yeah.
AM or FM?
FM. KLBJ, what do they call it? What's the frequency? 590 AM, KLBJ. Yeah, on tomorrow. Okay. I think we were...
Just wanted to warn everybody about some Kumbaya.
Right. There's also parking right next to the dog park. They have opened that street back up, so there's parking across the street from the City Hall, right next to it at the Catholic Church. It's very, very hard to park.
And carpooling would be a good idea. I wanted to give my wonderful colleagues here an opportunity to say a final closing statement, and then we'll go ahead and disband. I will be doing... I'll be signing books. I'm not sure where they're putting me. I guess I'll be right here, right where you can find me. So I will sit here and be more than happy to sign your books. Make sure that you have your book and that it's paid for, and bring it on up and all the rest. Yeah.
I heard that there was going to be some kind of big event going on down there at the same time.
I guess there's a softball game.
Yeah, you were saying on the radio, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that will interfere with what we're doing tomorrow. I think we're good for 6 p.m. So 6 p.m. tomorrow in San Marcos. Be there or be square. Gambate.
I just want to pick up on something Catherine's been saying all night about turning up and being there. Because I can tell you what she said about city councils getting really bored because they have the same 5 people there really, really applies up at the state legislature. So everybody, if you can make it here tonight, that means you're close enough into Austin to make it to Austin capital, a few blocks away. So please pay attention to the action alerts that go out. Because when we have a hearing on a bill, I can't tell you the impact it makes on state legislatures to have people there. Just your presence makes a difference. And I'll end with that. Sheila?
I am so grateful for the audience tonight. I really appreciate your patience and your sense of self-preservation when it comes to shipping. Technology is a tool. It's your friend, but it can be your enemy when somebody's wielding it against you. Please remember to contact your legislators about all these concerns and more. We have a concurrent resolution that we're trying to get sponsored. And so please remember us when you approach your legislators at the Capitol.
I want to say is that this doesn't go into effect until April 1st, so it's key that we all get out there before it goes into effect. And we really appreciate it, brothers and sisters in Austin coming out to help us with your market. Thank you so much.
I guess I'll close this. Catherine's going to be signing books here, I guess. And this has been wonderful and tremendous, and especially on Texas Independence Day. I'd like to also tell people that are not aware of it that on Texas Independence Day, or actually I think the day before, 2 days before, another sovereignty bill is House Concurrent Bill 76 has more teeth in it. I have not seen it, but it's not just the 10th Amendment. So feel good about being Texans and standing up to the feds.
Oh, and I believe that there is a donation.
I don't know, that's what I'm trying to find.
Texas has kicked the can down the road till 2010 on enhanced driver's licenses. Most recently, the Vice Chair of Appropriations, Raymond Payno, we can thank, has spurned the Department of Public Safety's request for funding on Real ID programs. So you may thank him for that.
Thank you.
That buys us a year on driver's licenses. However, the incremental application of RFID is going into the Transportation Worker Identity Credential, where they are now biometrifying the faces of mule skinners in tourist trades. They are going into our homes through our pets. They are going into our passport, where a 15-year record of your internal travel is kept no matter what you have done. In June of 2009, the Western Hemisphere Travel Initiative's demand for biometrics for travel will increase, starting with backscatter machines at airports. It's not law, but it is policy. With this much silent struggle for private sovereignty versus the belligerence of a corporatized entitlement, and these tech companies do have a lot of entitlement issues on your money. You have a choice, win or lose. If you win, your identity does not become a parcel for trade by LexisNexis or a hidden third party who profiteers from tracking your actions and selling it as information. When you lose big. Identity theft is neither convenient or safe, and more people are suffering from it as they report losses every day to their license division at DPS. So we have enemies in this struggle. Black market identity theft rings, corporate complicity, seeking no-bid contracts with the government, regardless of the risk to consumers, and the apathy of those who are seeking the highest bid. These are the same people who call your right to privacy immigration, skewing the issue so that Texans are misled by an immigration carrot they will never have in their grasp to their satisfaction with Real ID regulations. So if you go for their immigration bait, you get a license that exposes you utterly. Those who persist with Real ID regulations will be guilty of reckless endangerment of masses of people. So here is your chance to steer Texas the right way. Here is your chance to steer Texas the right way. We draw the line. We don't run our country like it's an Eastern Bloc of Europe, circa 1940. It is time to remind our leaders of America of real identity. The plan to catalog you, sift, create a product identity for you is not your idea. It's not an American idea. It's a globalist idea. Please don't concede to a place in your consciousness where you believe the policy generators who put Real ID in place aren't...
Guys, the big ag came in with the state bureaucracy, and they said, we want this program, we have to have this program. And they got authority for the Texas Animal Health Commission to make the entire NAIS program mandatory here in Texas. Now, ever since, we've been fighting this, and we have mostly held the agency to a slow crawl on it. We've sort of been staring at each other over the fence line. But the problem is they still have legal authority. And, next week they could wake up and put out their eggs, and there wouldn't be a whole lot we could do about it when it came down to stopping the regulations. What we need is to get that authority yanked away from them. We tried it last session. We came really, really close last session. We got the bill through the House, and we died on the last day of the Senate. So we're back. We have another bill, and we have flyers. If I'd known Catherine's were going to be yellow, I would have picked a different color. Look for the slightly lighter yellow flyers with a picture of a microchip on them. We'll put them out on the table. Catherine doesn't mind. This has information on the bill number. It's Senate Bill 682. And it's been sitting pretty quiet so far in the Texas legislature. I'm disappointed. I am not seeing our senators jumping on and co-sponsoring it. So what we need are a lot of phone calls. We need folks, and we've got all of the information on the back of the flyer. You guys are willing to do a lot of work, and I appreciate that, but I've made it as easy as possible. You have the phone numbers right here. Call your senator. Tell him you want him to co-sponsor Senate Bill 682. And one thing, especially for the folks here, this is not, and y'all already know it's not just about farm animals. I'm preaching to the choir here. But it's about our food supply. That's something that's really fundamental that your neighbors might understand, that your communities hopefully will understand. It's about who has access, who has the right, who has the ability to raise food, and what are our options. And so do me a favor, even if you already know about NACE, grab some flyers anyways and hand them out in your communities also. So let's see if we can't get this bill through this session. Thank you.
What it's really about is, all of you know, it's about control. And, of course, there may be some new people. I certainly hope that there's new people, especially out there on the Internet listening in. So we really want to extend our open hand, not a clenched fist, to the people and say, look, this is about you, your pets, and everybody's got something in this fight. So, you know, that's what makes this such a good coalition of bringing everything together, because it's about food control, and then next is going to be people control. So it's a very thing that we need to watch out for. Now we have Sheila Dean, who I didn't have time up front to tell you about. We have Truth Seekers meeting on the south end of town, and I think the Internet people have got that. And then also, I want to take this opportunity to say some thank yous, and especially to Brave New Books that is giving us the facility and a lot of help here. So, and we've got a list of other people that we need to say thank you to. We'll get to that next. But without more to do, I want to get Sheila Dean, who is a grassroots advocate for our 511 campaign. She's been a speaker there at our group, and we really appreciate that. I think out on the net there's a YouTube of her, or Google, I'm not sure, but I think there's a video of her at our meeting. So you might even try that. And but Sheila, we appreciate all you do, and thank you for being at Truth Seekers.
I am really proud to be with the level of activism that I've witnessed here with the shipping. You know, look at these ladies. Aren't they gorgeous? Please give them a big hand. I doubt I can outdo myself with all of this. Thank you for coming to Brave New Books tonight. I am the, 511 campaigner for the opposition against Real ID. And I'm here to speak just briefly about what kind of dangers we all face with the Real ID. So we're all here tonight because we're exploring problems with the prolific use of RFID technologies here in Texas as identity solutions. And it's just not working out. In my work here in Texas, we've discovered that DHS has already tried and failed the RFID technology at the border in an experimental run with the U.S. visit program at the borders. The use of biometric data storage and microchip or magnetic strip technologies is just as big brother today as it was when they released the regulations in January of 2008. It is not safe to say that RFID for government identity is an appropriate use of taxpayers in Texas. It's a waste of our money, and anything else is an understatement.
Hooked up to the Internet for the Internet feed, and hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Randall Mock. I'm emceeing, and I'm, I guess, proud to be in this position of MC. I've got the pleasure of introducing 4 beautiful, active, patriotic ladies here, and I'm just so glad that they asked me. I don't know why, but nevertheless, I don't want to take a lot of time here. We have Lisa Compoletta of San Marcos, who is fighting the chip down in San Marcos there, and she's been fighting this for some time down there in San Marcos and doing a great job, and then I guess she called in reinforcements. So I think we've got some good ones, and
furthermore, it's not only up to them, it's up to each one of you to help out. So you know the schedule for tomorrow, but I don't want to take too much time here, so let me hand this over to Lisa Marie, and we'll have her have about 8 minutes here. And
hi, y'all. I'm Lisa Marie. I'm from San Marcos, Texas. With your neighbors here in Central Texas Hill Country, we all come together when it comes to issues of liberty. We're here tonight simply to say that we just want one simple change to our animal control ordinance in San Marcos, and that is just one simple change. Simply, we don't want that notion of mandatory in the ordinance. We don't want to be criminals in our own home in San Marcos. We want to be able to know what the rules of the law are and be able to follow them and not have to break them, and that's why we're standing up on this issue. Our community is mobilized. We're all coming. We have a vigil tomorrow and several different events from 12:30 to 1:30 at Grins in San Marcos. We'll have a meet and greet with Dr. Albrecht. We'll also have from 4 o'clock to 5:30 at Wake the Dead in San Marcos. We're going to have a pre-protest where we'll get together and make T-shirts and posters and talk about the issues and a meet and greet with Dr. Albrecht. And then, of course, at 6:30 is when the citizens of our community will sign in to make their argumentation known and what our concerns are with this ordinance. So we would encourage not only San Marcos residents to come out and sign at 6:30 and then to speak on that issue, and then our council meeting begins at 7. The issues are very simple. This is a mandatory. It was never discussed by the City Council, and that's why there's public outcry, and we just simply want that one item changed. I think this is also an issue of health for our pets, as well as some religious and privacy concerns. And once again, we appreciate everybody giving us the opportunity to make the issues of San Marcos known. And the fact that this is a packed house shows how concerned people are throughout Central Texas. And I see the head shake in the audience on this mandatory microchip issue. I appreciate your time. We look forward to you coming to our community. We love our pets in San Marcos, but we also love our freedom. Thank you very much, all, for your support.
thank you. You responded just like I wanted to, and yell and everything else. So I think it's okay with George on the network. But anyhow, this is wonderful. I tell you, we are. Now we have Judith McGarry, Farm and Ranch Freedom Alliance, and she's been very active for at least a couple of years here. 3 years, okay. And so, but you know, the best example I heard is the other day when Alex Jones came up and said, we're going to put a $16 chip in a $4 chicken. So that's something to take to other people, those that don't know that. But again, I won't take a lot of time. I want to pass this over to Judith so that we can hear what her thinking is. Thank you.
Fantastic to see this kind of a turnout at Brave New Books. This is a wonderful, wonderful event. For those of you who aren't familiar with the National Animal Identification System, or NAIS, okay, the hisses tell me at least some of you all are, but for those that aren't, basically it boils down to a plan where anyone who owns even one livestock or poultry animal, so a chicken, a horse, a pet pot-bellied pig, or any of the farm animals, would have to register their property with the government, tag each animal, in most cases electronically, and report their movements to a database within 24 hours. A lot of people say, is this going to lead to human microchipping or human tracking? And actually my response is, this is human tracking. Because anyone who owns an animal now gets to report their movements to the government every time they pretty much go anywhere with their animals. Because last time I noticed, my horses don't load themselves up in the trailer and take off on their own. So back in 2005, the Texas legislature actually passed a law authorizing this program here in Texas. This was done before pretty much any average animal owner knew the first thing or had heard about NAIS. But the big industry